You are listening to Proof Text, a Glossa House podcast exploring Scripture and all things related to it. New episodes are released daily. For more information, check out glossahouse.com and subscribe to our channels on Spotify and YouTube. Welcome and enjoy.
Shalom, this is Dr. Jennifer Noonan, and I want to welcome you to this week's episode of SLA Insights. Over the last few weeks, the last few episodes, probably 20 or so, I've been talking about input, especially comprehensible input, and the importance of input for language acquisition. So today I want to kind of bring it all to a close, wrap up, and review the various topics that I've covered. And I'm going to include episode numbers to help you go back if you want to specifically find one of these items to review or to go into more depth. So to begin with, I started with an introduction to input, and this was covered in episode 15. Input is the language that a learner hears or reads that has some kind of communicative intent. And so we're talking here about the skills of listening and reading, two of the four language skills, the receptive skills. And notice too that input is not just random collections of letters or a paradigm, it's something that conveys meaning. And then we went on to talk about how comprehensible input is a subset of input, is the input that a learner can understand. And this is what's essential for acquisition. Everybody needs comprehensible input in order to be able to acquire the language. According to Creation, input that is ideal for acquisition is only 1 degree more difficult than your current level, that is I+1. Now from there, I went on to talk about how we make input comprehensible. There are different ways to do that. One of them is through contextual clues, and I covered that in episode 16. You can also simplify the input as a way of making it comprehensible, and I covered that in episode 17. Another way of making input comprehensible in real time in the context of a conversation is through negotiating meaning, and that I covered in episode 18. So those are different ways to make the input comprehensible. Then I also talked about increasing the quantity. How do we increase the quantity of comprehensible input? And there were 3 approaches that I highlighted. One is immersion, covered in episode 20. Total physical response, or TPR, in 21, and extensive reading in episode 22. All of those approaches are ways to boost up your quantity of comprehensible input in your classroom. And from there, then, I talked about how you increase the quality of comprehensible input through various approaches. And this is a way of manipulating the input in such a way as to derive more intake, to help the learner derive more intake from the input that he or she receives. One is input enhancement, covered in episode 24, input flooding the input with the target item, not just giving a lot of input. That was in episode 25. And then episodes 26 through 34, I really broke down this approach called processing instruction, how to develop and maintain input activities that will keep in mind the learner's default processing strategies. And so I really pulled apart that one. I covered processing instruction in 26. I looked at the specific processing strategies that learners use by default in episodes 27 and 28. And then 29 through 34 covered the 6 guidelines that you need to follow in order to create effective structured input activities. And so all of this, again, with the goal of creating input that is going to be more effective for the learner, helping them to acquire the language more quickly, more efficiently. And then finally, I wrapped up with an interview with Katie Lewis, an SLA practitioner who has been trained in SLA and is using it in her classroom for a modern language, to get some ideas from her, what she's doing, how it's working, what works well, and what some of her challenges are. So In conclusion, this wraps up our discussion of input and its role in language acquisition. I'll be moving from here into a series on output after a couple of standalone episodes to bring in some interviews, some resources that I think you'll find helpful. So until next week, I hope you have a great week, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.
Interested in growing your ancient language skills but not sure where to start? Glossa House can help. From illustrated readers and short stories to lexicons and grammars, Glossa House offers a variety of resources for beginning, intermediate, and experienced ancient language learners. Head to glossahouse.com today. Glossa House, language resources for the global community.